Hi, and thanks for joining me. My name is Jamie Flowers, and our topic today is salt. So why is salt such a big deal? Why does everybody say reduce your salt intake? Well, for a lot of people, salt can really raise their blood pressure. So another word for blood pressure, and we're going to use this a lot here today, so I'm just going to show it here, is hypertension. You're going to hear me use this term a whole lot through this. So hypertension is the leading cause of cardiovascular disease and stroke in this country. It is also the second leading cause of kidney failure. I am a former cardiac intensive care nurse. I have seen what hypertension can do in the long term, so it does get really important that we keep this under control. So over 60 million Americans have hypertension, and a lot of people say at least 30 million either don't know they have it or are well on their way to having it. So it is a really big concern in this country that really needs to be addressed. So why not just don't have any salt, right? No. So our bodies need salt. And the reason our bodies need salt is one of the major components of salt is a mineral called sodium. You hear people a lot just saying the same thing, salt, sodium, meaning the same thing. Sodium is a component of salt, okay? So we need sodium. Without sodium, our muscles don't work, our brains don't work, and we don't feel things on our skin. So sodium, really, really important. So let's dig a little bit deeper into hypertension. Most people, when they're told that they have high blood pressure, their doctor will tell them to go onto a low salt diet. So they'll go home and they'll start making food without any salt, and it doesn't taste very good. It really tastes really bland. So a lot of people are like, I don't like healthy cooking because it just doesn't taste as good. And that's where sort of the problem lies, because 70 to 80% of the sodium that Americans get does not come from the food that they are making at home and the salt that they're using at home. It comes from processed foods. So where is it found in processed foods? It's pretty much found everywhere in processed foods. Pasta sauce, condiments, breads, crackers, chips, cookies, canned soups, lunch meats, excuse me, frozen foods especially, and fast food. Just as give you an example, a kid's Happy Meal with a cheeseburger has over 1,100 milligrams of sodium in it, which for a child is pretty much all they need in a day. So that's a big deal. We are on average getting at least twice as much sodium in a day that we really need to have. So we're going to talk about ways to kind of skip the salt, skip the sodium, but still get the flavor of foods. So we're going to do our first recipe, and it's going to be a black bean mash. So what I have here is just a can of black beans. I just drained, and I half mashed them a little bit just for sake of time. So I'm going to mash the beans just a little bit. You don't have to mash them. If you like them whole, go ahead, keep them whole. And to here, I'm going to add some garlic and some cilantro. So here I'm using fresh garlic and fresh cilantro. You can also use like a garlic paste or bottled minced garlic. Cilantro can come in a paste if you want to keep it. And cilantro just doesn't stay very long when you buy it fresh. So you can absolutely do it in a paste. Does the same thing. So we're going to mix these together. Now, I am going to add a little bit of salt to this. However, what I'm going to add is pink Himalayan salt. So here's the difference between table salt that you're just going to get out of a regular shaker and something like a pink Himalayan salt or a sea salt. The difference lies in that the salt out of the salt shaker has been bleached, and it has most of the minerals sucked out of it, and it's been replaced with more sodium. So table salt has more sodium than something like a pink Himalayan or a sea salt does on average. So these are less processed. They still have a lot of the natural minerals in them, and to me, I think they taste better. It has more of that real salt taste to it, and it's prettier. So I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of the pink Himalayan salt on. I'm going to put a little of the cumin spice. Give it a nice flavor here. And then I'm going to top this all off with some fresh lime juice. So this is a great thing for kids. Anytime you can tell kids that they can mash something, I'm sure that they will step right up. So I'm going to mix all of this together. Now this can be used as a dip, just with some chips. Or if you take just a tortilla shell, you can spread this on here and roll it up to make a nice lunch, dinner. Kids will love this, anything with their hands. So there's our first recipe. So why is there so much salt in processed food? Well, it really goes back because salt is the oldest preservative on the planet. When hunters killed something, they used salt to preserve it, so they had it over a long stretch of time, and they didn't have to eat it all at once because they couldn't. So what it does is it really makes food shelf stable. Manufacturers of food really need their food to be able to sit on shelves for months, even years, without going bad. Excuse me. But I hear a lot of people say, if that's true, and there's so much sodium in these processed foods, why doesn't it taste salty? There's really two reasons for that. The first is the salt is masked by sugar. If you have seen my other video on sugar, you'll know processed foods contain a lot of sugar in them to mask a lot of these tastes. So you may not notice it because the salt's gonna offset that. And the other reason is, over time, the more processed foods you consume and the more sodium your taste buds come in contact with, the less sensitive they become. So over time, you just don't notice it as much, and it just needs more flavor for your taste buds to really get in there. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so the last piece of our hypertension puzzle is something that really I think goes overlooked a lot. So for your blood pressure to work normally, we normally need 1 part sodium and 4 parts of another mineral called potassium. Now in this country, it's really flipped. And we get 4 parts sodium for every 1 part potassium. And that's because potassium, my handy dandy sheet here, potassium is really only found in real, whole, natural foods. Fruits, vegetables, whole grains. So if you're consuming a diet that's high in processed foods, your potassium level intake is probably pretty low and your sodium probably pretty high. Even if you reduce your sodium, if you do not raise that potassium up, you still aren't going to get the blood pressure control and that hypertension control that you're looking for. So as you decrease those processed foods, really start replacing it with whole, foods that are high in potassium. It's going to help balance that out. So our last recipe here, one of my favorites, and again, great for kids. So here I just have some plain popcorn. No flavoring to it, no salt to it, no nothing, just plain popcorn. And I'm gonna take some olive oil. You can use a spray olive oil if you have it. I don't, so I'm just gonna use regular. I'm gonna put a little olive oil on this. And then I have a couple of herbs here, just dried herbs. I have parsley, chives, and dill. So I'm gonna sprinkle them. And as I sprinkle them on, they're going to stick to the olive oil. And you can do this in any combination you want. You can use different herbs if you like different herbs. Doesn't matter. Then I'm just gonna dig my hands in here. And I'm gonna get this popcorn around. Again, kids will love this. Mix it around. And now look at this. I have this great flavored popcorn here. Tastes delicious. I did it myself, and I'm starting to use alternatives now. Like, everything doesn't have to taste salty. So if you use things like spices and herbs, seeds, citrus, putting lemons, limes, orange zest, orange juice on stuff, or even things like onions and garlic and shallots, things that just have a whole lot of flavor, really spice up your food without so much sodium, and start making stuff at home that is to your taste, and it has the spices and herbs that you love. You don't have to rely on seasoning mix. It's so easy to do this yourself, and it's going to be something that you are going to love. So I hope you enjoyed this. Remember our words: sodium, potassium, hypertension. Hope to see you next time.